Have you ever wondered what you would do if you saw something wrong happening right in front of you? I'm not talking about easy decisions, situations where you have time to think, weigh options, calculate risks. I'm talking about that moment when you turn the corner and come face to face with something that makes your stomach churn. When every instinct in your body screams at you to back away, to pretend you didn't see it, to protect your own skin. And yet, something deeper, something you didn't even know existed within you, pushes you in the opposite direction, makes you take a step when you should retreat, makes you speak when you should remain silent. And in that second, in that fraction of a moment when you choose to act, your life changes completely. Because some decisions cannot be undone. Some lines, once crossed, leave no way back. She was returning from the market, the same walk she took 3 times a week, carrying bags too heavy for her thin arms, cutting through streets she knew by heart. It was late afternoon, that time when the light begins to fade, but it's not yet complete night. The kind of moment when the city is in transition, when honest people are going home, and others are emerging from the shadows. The shopping bags were cutting off circulation in her fingers. She was tired of that kind of tiredness that comes from working too much for too long, waking up early and going to bed late, never having a real break. All she wanted was to get home, take off her shoes that hurt, eat something quick, and maybe, just maybe, have 30 minutes of peace before having to think about the next day. And then she saw 3 men in the side alley. It wasn't uncommon to see people there. It was a shortcut everyone used, a somewhat forgotten area between 2 buildings where trash accumulated and nobody paid much attention. But there was something different about that group. Something in their posture, in the way they moved, that made her instinctively slow her pace. And then she realized, it wasn't 3 men. It was 3 men surrounding something. Someone. A child. The boy was huddled against the dirty brick wall, trying to make himself smaller, trying to disappear. He couldn't have been more than 8, maybe 9 years old. And the men around him weren't just talking. They were intimidating. Their voices were too loud, too aggressive. The kind of tone that leaves no room for doubt about their intentions. She should have walked straight past logic, screamed at her. You don't get involved in trouble that isn't yours. You don't risk your neck for strangers. Especially not when there are 3 grown men and you're a lone woman who can barely carry her own groceries. She knew this. She'd learned this lesson too early in life. That the world doesn't reward heroes. That good intentions get you killed. That you survive by becoming invisible. But then one of them grabbed the boy's arm. Grabbed it hard. The kind of hardness that leaves a mark, and the boy made a sound. Not a scream. Worse than a scream. It was that muffled moan of someone who has already learned that screaming is useless, that no one comes, that you are alone. Perhaps this sounds familiar to you. Perhaps you've heard this sound before, or made this sound. Perhaps you also know exactly what goes through a child's mind at that moment. The feeling of being completely helpless. That the world is big and violent, and there is no safe place. Something inside her snapped. Wasn't a conscious decision. There was no moment to weigh the pros and cons. It was a visceral, instinctive, irresistible reaction. She dropped the bags on the ground. The sound of things breaking inside, glass shattering, but she didn't even look back. She just walked into the alley. Her steps were firm even though her legs trembled. Her heart pounded so loudly it seemed impossible that the men wouldn't hear. But she kept walking. She kept getting closer, and then she spoke. Let him go. The voice came out firmer than she felt. There was command there, authority she didn't know she possessed. And for a second, just a second, it worked. The 3 men turned at the same time, genuine surprise on their faces, as if they couldn't process what they were seeing. A woman, alone, small, clearly frightened, but there nonetheless, defying them. The surprise lasted only that second. Then came amusement. One of them laughed. It wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the kind of laugh dangerous people give when they realize someone weak is trying to appear strong. Or what? He asked. taking a step toward her. And she realized, at that moment, that she had no answer, she had no plan. I had absolutely nothing but the absolute certainty that I wouldn't let it continue, even without knowing what it was. Even without knowing who that boy was or what those men wanted. Even without having any way to defend herself if they decided that she, too, was a problem that needed to be solved. Stay with me. Until the end. Because what happens when you do the right thing at the wrong time will show you that courage has a price. And sometimes, that price is much higher than you imagined. Because she didn't yet know, standing there in that alley, with 3 men staring at her and a trembling child behind her, that she had just placed herself in the path of something much bigger and much more dangerous than she could imagine. I didn't know that in a matter of seconds, everything would change, and that the decision to intervene would connect her to someone in a way that neither of them was prepared to handle. But she would only find that out when it was too late to turn back. The man who had laughed took another step. He was close now. Close enough for her to smell cigarettes and something stronger, perhaps whiskey. Close enough to see the scars on his face, the marks of a life that hadn't been kind and that had taught him not to be kind to anyone. You have 2 seconds to turn around and forget you saw anything here, he said, his voice low but heavy with threat. After that, you become part of the problem, and we solve problems. She should have left. Every cell in her body screamed to run, but her feet wouldn't move. And when she glanced at the boy, she saw something that made any thought of escape evaporate. He was looking at her. Not with hope, exactly. It was something more desperate than that. It was the look of someone who had learned not to expect rescue, but who still couldn't stop wishing. She recognized that look. She'd seen it in the mirror years ago, when she was the same age as that boy, when she was in the same situation, trapped, with no way out, waiting for someone, anyone, to be brave enough to intervene. No one had intervened for her. No one had stood between her and danger. And she had sworn, in those years of loneliness and pain that followed, that if she ever had the chance, she wouldn't be the coward who walked right past. So she didn't go. No, she said. Her voice trembled this time, but the word came out clearly. I won't let you hurt him. The silence that followed was heavy, dangerous. The 3 men exchanged glances, and she saw the change. There was no longer amusement on their faces. It was something cold, calculated, violent. And if you're feeling the same tightness in your chest that she felt at that moment, if that courage mixed with terror makes sense to you, leave a like. This show's Heart of Protection stories, stories about people who choose to do what's right, even when it's dangerous, even when they have no chance, are stories that need to continue being told. One of the men, not the one who had spoken, but another, quieter, more dangerous because of it, took something out of his pocket, metal gleaming faintly in the dying light. She didn't need to see clearly to know what it was. The shape, the weight, the way he held it, with the familiarity of someone who had used it before. Do it. The world suddenly became very clear. She could hear every sound. The distant traffic, the wind moving trash across the ground, the boy's rapid breathing, her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, and she realized, with crystal clear and terrifying clarity, that she had made a fatal mistake. Not because she had intervened, but because she had intervened without having a way to win, without even having a way to defend herself. She wasn't a hero, she wasn't a fighter, she was just someone too tired, too scared, but who couldn't stand by while the child suffered. And now she was going to pay for it. She was going to pay dearly. The man with the knife took a step. She instinctively recoiled, but felt the wall behind her. She was trapped. The boy was beside her, too small, too vulnerable, and the 3 men were advancing, surrounding her, cutting off any escape route. You made the wrong choice, the man said, and there was something almost like pity in his voice, as if he genuinely regretted that. She had put herself in that position, as if she had no choice but what she was about to do. She closed her eyes for a second, not in giving up, in preparation. If it was going to hurt, if it was going to end there, At least she would know that I had tried, that I had done the right thing, that some child, even if I didn't save her, would at least see that someone had cared enough to try. And that's when he heard it. Footsteps, quick, heavy, running. She opened her eyes. The three men had heard it too. They turned their heads at the same time, searching for the source of the sound. And then she saw it. A figure appearing in the alleyway, running towards them with a speed and purpose that cut through the air like a blade. Relief came first. Someone had seen it. Someone was coming to help. But then the figure grew closer, clearer, and she saw details that turned her relief into confusion. He was a man, tall, strong, and there was something in the way he moved, in the way the three men reacted to his presence, not with the irritation of someone being interrupted, but with something much more visceral, much closer to fear that told her this wasn't random intervention. That was personal. And when he stopped a few meters away, breathless but steady, she saw what he was wearing. It wasn't ordinary clothing. It was a uniform. And on his chest, reflecting the faint light that remained, was a badge she recognized even from a distance. Sheriff. The badge reflected the faint light that remained of the day, and she felt something between relief and even deeper terror. Because help had arrived, yes, but help meant testimony. It meant I would have to explain. It meant visibility. And visibility, in her experience, only brought pain. The sheriff stopped a few meters away, his hand already reaching for his gun in the holster. He didn't draw it yet, but the message was clear. He was ready. He was in control. And by the way, the three men instinctively backed away. They knew it too. Stay away from her. His voice cut through the air with an authority that left no room for discussion. Stay away from the boy. Now. The men hesitated. Just for a second, but they hesitated. And in that second, she saw the truth. They knew him. Not as an abstract figure of authority. They knew him personally. And there was history there. History that involved genuine fear mixed with hatred. What seems simple begins to reveal layers that no one expected. Hayes, one of them, spat out the name as if it were poison. Always showing up where he's not wanted, and you're always getting close to the wrong people. Hayes didn't look away, didn't let his guard down for even a fraction of a second. Last chance. Get out now. They exchanged glances. Quick calculation. 3 against 1 technically gave them the advantage, but he had a badge, he had a weapon, and most importantly, he had something they didn't. Training, experience, and that deadly calm of someone who has been through worse situations and survived. The man with the knife slowly put it away. A deliberate movement to show he was obeying, but without haste, without complete submission. This doesn't end here, he said, looking not at Hayes, but at her, at Lena, and the message was clear. They knew her face now. They weren't going to forget. Then they left, slowly, maintaining eye contact as much as possible before finally turning their backs and disappearing down the street. The silence that followed was heavy. She leaned against the wall, her legs finally giving way to the trembling she had held back throughout the confrontation. The boy remained clinging to her, his small body trembling against hers. Hayes put away the gun he'd never drawn and approached. "Are you hurt?" Her voice had changed, still firm, but gentle now. Concerned, she shook her head, not trusting her own voice. "And you?" He looked at the boy, and that's when she saw it. The way his face completely changed. How all the professionalism, all the authority, melted away and gave way to something raw and frightened. "Jake, are you okay? Did they hurt you?" Jake. The boy had a name, and from the way Hayes knelt in front of him, checking his arms, his face, searching for injuries with hands, to trembling to be merely professional, she understood. It wasn't some random sheriff answering a call. It was the father. That was his son. "I'm okay, Dad," Jake whispered, his voice small but firm. "She saved me. They were going to take me away, but she showed up and stood in front of me and didn't leave, even when they got angry." Hayes looked at her then, really looked, and there was something in that look that made her want to look away, that made her feel exposed in a way that had nothing to do with physical danger. It was recognition. It was him seeing something in her that most people never saw, because she had spent her whole life being invisible. She had spent her life being too small to matter, too quiet to be heard, too insignificant for anyone to pay attention to. She worked as a cleaning assistant in 3 different places. She cleaned empty offices in the early morning, restaurant bathrooms after closing time, classrooms before the children arrived, work that no one saw, work that was only noticed when it wasn't done. She had lived alone since she was 17. She had left home in the middle of the night, carrying only a backpack and the terror that if she stayed another day, her stepfather would finally do what he had threatened to do for years. She had never returned. She had never had contact with her mother, who had chosen to believe him instead of protecting her own daughter. She had learned early, too early, that the world didn't protect people like her. That you either learned to become invisible, to not make a sound, to not draw attention, or you suffered the consequences of being seen. And she had become very good at being invisible. So good that sometimes she felt she was truly disappearing. That one day she would wake up and no longer be there. Just absence where the person should be. But seeing that boy, seeing Jake cornered with fear in his eyes, had awakened memories she had tried to bury so deep that she had almost convinced herself they no longer existed. Memories of when she was the cornered child, of when she silently begged for someone, anyone, to be brave enough to intervene, to say no, to stand between her and the danger. No one had ever done that for her. No one had cared enough. Or perhaps they had seen and chosen to ignore it because it was safer that way, easier, less complicated. And she had sworn, in those lonely years that followed, that if she ever saw someone in the same situation, she wouldn't be the coward who walked right past. She wouldn't be the person who pretended not to see, even if it cost her everything, even if it put her at risk, even if it made her visible again. "What's your name?" Hayes asked, still kneeling but looking up at her. "Lena." Her voice came out hoarse. She cleared her throat. "I am Lena. Lena." He repeated it as if he were memorizing it, as if it were important. "You saved my son. You didn't know me. You didn't know who he was. You didn't know I was coming. And yet you stood between them and him, even knowing there were 3 of them, even seeing the knife." She didn't know what to say, because when he spoke like that, it seemed like something grand, heroic, but it hadn't been. It had simply been an inability to do things differently, to be different. "Anyone would have done the same," she murmured. "No." The word came out firmly, definitively. "They wouldn't have. Most people would have walked right past, maybe called the police from a distance, safely. But you went in, without a weapon, without protection, without backup, just you and your courage." He stood up, and she realized how tall he was, how he occupied space in a way she had never been able to. "Never forget this. Never. Comment below. This makes sense to me." The words hung in the air between them. She wanted to say it wasn't necessary, that she had only done what any decent person would do. But the way he looked at her, as if he saw something she herself couldn't see, made the words die in her throat. Jake finally released her waist, but stayed close, still within what could be called a safe zone. Hayes reached out to his son, and the boy took it, but continued to look at Lena with something akin to adoration. "You're hurt," Hayes said, and only then did she realize she was holding her shoulder, the spot where she'd hit the wall when one of the men pushed her. It would bruise, it would hurt for days, but that was all. Nothing serious, nothing she hadn't survived before. "I'm fine," she replied, letting her shoulder fall and trying to sound convincing. He didn't seem to believe her, but he didn't insist. Instead, he looked at her bags, still on the ground where she'd left them. "Groceries, scattered, some things broken. Let me take you home. It's the least I can do. No need. I live nearby, Ilena." The way he said her name made her stop. There was urgency there. real concern. Those men, they saw your face, and they don't forget. Please, let me make sure you get home safely. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to say she could take care of herself, that she'd done it her whole life. But the truth was, she was scared. Her hands were still trembling. And the idea of walking alone through the darkening streets, knowing that 3 dangerous men now knew her face, was too terrifying to ignore. Okay, she agreed, grabbing what she managed to salvage from the shopping trip. From that moment on, everything begins to change silently. They walked in heavy silence. Hayes kept Jake close, her hand on the boy's shoulder, but her eyes constantly scanning the street, checking, searching, as if she expected the men to return. And perhaps she did. Perhaps she knew something she didn't. It was only when they were almost arriving at her building, old and peeling in a part of town that nobody visited by choice, that she began to process the details she had seen, but hadn't stopped to analyze in the heat of the moment. Those men weren't just street thugs. She'd realized that when she approached, but fear had clouded her judgment. Now, with distance and relative safety, the details returned with disturbing clarity. One of them had a tattoo on his neck. It wasn't just any tattoo. She'd seen that symbol before. In news reports, on the news broadcasts, on the laundromat television where she sometimes waited for her clothes to dry. It was a gang symbol. Not just any gang. One of the big ones. One of those that controlled territories. One of those that appeared in headlines about shootings and drug trafficking. And the other one, the one who had pulled out the knife, was wearing a watch that shone even in the dim light. Expensive. Very expensive. The kind of watch that didn't make sense for someone who supposedly lived off street crime. It was a discrepancy that indicated something bigger. Money coming from a more organized source. And the way they had positioned themselves when she appeared. It hadn't been casual. It had been tactical. Automatically forming a semicircle, blocking exits, maintaining specific distances between them, as if they had trained. As if they did it professionally. They weren't just opportunistic criminals who had seen a child alone and decided to scare her. They were something much worse. They were organized. They were dangerous. And Jake didn't just seem scared when she saw him. He seemed specifically terrified, in a way that indicated he knew exactly who those men were and what they were capable of. Those men, she said suddenly, breaking the silence. They weren't just intimidating him, were they? They were going to do something worse. Hayes stopped walking. He looked at Jake, then at her, and that internal struggle was visible on his face. How much to tell? How much to hide? How to protect both his son and the woman who had saved his son without scaring either of them more than they already were? Not here, he said finally. When we get to your apartment, I'll explain everything. But first, I need to make sure you're safe. They kept walking. She guided them up the narrow stairs, down the hallway that smelled of mold and old food, to the door that had 3 locks, because one wasn't enough in that neighborhood. She opened it, and the reality of her life was exposed. Tiny apartment, old furniture that had come with the place. Nothing on the walls, because decorating was a luxury I couldn't afford. Hayes didn't comment. He simply entered when she waved, automatically checking windows, looking for possible exits. Training, always vigilant, always prepared. Jake sat on the sofa that was also her bed at night, suddenly exhausted, as if all the adrenaline had drained away at once, leaving only a tired child. They wanted to take me, Jake said suddenly, his voice small. They said they were going to use me to make my father stop, that if he didn't stop investigating, they were going to hurt me. Her stomach sank. Investigate, what? And who exactly were they? And what on earth had she gotten herself into? Hayes closed his eyes for a second. Pure pain in his face. I asked you not to go out alone. I asked you to stay at the neighbor's house until I came to pick you up. I just went to the store. I was just going to buy candy, but they were waiting. Jake looked at his father with eyes that had seen too much for 8 years old. They knew where I was going to be. How did they know, Dad? And that was a question Hayes clearly didn't want to answer. not in front of the child, not in a way that would make the boy realize just how deep the danger really was. He knelt in front of his son. "Listen, you're safe now, and I'll make sure you stay safe. But I need to talk to Lena for a minute. Adult to adult. Can you stay here and watch something on TV while we talk in the kitchen?" Jake nodded, and Hayes turned on the small television, finding some cartoon. Then he motioned for Lena to follow him into the tiny kitchen that could barely fit 2 people. When they were far enough away that Jake couldn't hear, Hayes finally spoke. "You need to understand what you just did. Those men aren't ordinary criminals. They work for a criminal organization I've been investigating for months, and you just put yourself on their radar. They saw you, they know your face, and they're going to want to make sure you're not a threat." Lena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She had known she was taking a risk when she entered that alley, but she had imagined immediate risk. Shoves, maybe a few bruises. Not this. Not becoming a target of a criminal organization. Not having her face memorized by people who made children disappear. "I'm not a threat," she whispered, her voice weaker than she intended. "I didn't see anything. I don't know anything. I just couldn't let them hurt him." Hayes ran a hand through his hair, frustration and worry battling on his face. "I know, and that's exactly why I'm here. Because you did the right thing, and I'm not going to let you pay for it. How are you going to stop them? You yourself said they know who I am." "I know. And that's why I'm going to put up protection. I'll have someone watching this street, and I'll leave my number. Anything strange, anyone you don't recognize, you call me. Immediately." She looked at him, really looked. She saw the weariness around his eyes, the lines of worry, the weight he carried, and she realized he wasn't doing this out of professional obligation. He was doing it because he felt responsible, because his son had become bait, and she had taken the hook without knowing it. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the truth is, Hayes was only 2 blocks away when the alert came. Son missing. The words every father dreaded, but which he dreaded doubly because he knew exactly the kind of people who had a motive to take Jake. He had dropped everything. Didn't even think. Just ran. His heart pounding with a visceral fear he hadn't felt since his wife died 3 years ago, leaving him alone to raise an 8-year-old boy. A boy who was too clever for his own good. A boy who overheard conversations he shouldn't have. Who understood things children shouldn't understand. And who, because of that, because of his own father's investigation, had become a target. When Hayes turned the corner and saw the scene, his blood ran cold. 3 men, he recognized 2 of them immediately. They were henchmen from a trafficking operation he'd been investigating for 8 months. A big operation. Dangerous. With connections that went all the way into his own department. And they were surrounding Jake, his son, his only family, the only good thing left in a world that seemed increasingly rotten. He had drawn his weapon without thinking. He had prepared himself to do anything, pay any price, sacrifice any principle to save the boy. But then he saw, and what he saw made him stop, for a fraction of a second that could have cost him everything. A woman, small, fragile in appearance, simple, worn clothes. Clearly terrified, he could see it even from afar, in the way she held her own arms, in the trembling she tried to hide. But she was positioned between the men and Jake, like a human shield, as if her own body could make a difference against 3 armed and dangerous men. She didn't know who those men were. That was obvious. She didn't know that one of them had killed before, that another had tortured informants, that the third had no moral boundaries whatsoever. She didn't know she was seconds away from death, that one wrong move, one wrong word, would be enough for them to decide she was a problem that needed to be eliminated. But there she was anyway, unarmed, unprotected, without even knowing Hayes was coming. Just her and pure, stupid courage that should have been suicidal but was somehow keeping Jake alive. And that changed something fundamental within him. Because Hayes had seen a lot in his career. He had seen bravery. I had seen people do courageous things when they had training, equipment, backup. But this was different. This was someone with nothing but conviction that letting a child suffer was unacceptable, and she was willing to die for it. When he finally acted, when he pushed the men away and ensured that both Jake and she were safe, one thing became absolutely clear in his mind. He owed his son's life to this woman. And a debt like that wasn't repaid with thank yous and a handshake. A debt like that was repaid with protection, with the guarantee that she wouldn't suffer the consequences for doing the right thing. But now, standing in that tiny kitchen, looking at her apartment, realizing the kind of life she lived alone, struggling, without a safety net, he understood the magnitude of what he was asking for. Police protection was limited. He could put a patrol car on the street for a few days. He could have someone keeping an eye on her. But eventually, resources would run out. Eventually, he would have to choose between continuing the investigation or guaranteeing her safety permanently. And if you chose the investigation, if you let the case continue, she would be exposed, vulnerable, an easy target for men who showed no mercy to witnesses. But if he abandoned the investigation, if he let those criminals continue operating, how many other children, like Jake, would become targets? How many other innocent people would suffer? I don't want protection that takes resources away from important cases, Lena said suddenly, as if she were reading his thoughts. I'll be fine. I'll be more careful. I'll change my routine. No. The word came out more abruptly than he intended. You don't understand. These people don't give up. They don't forget. And you became a threat the second you intervened. So what do you want me to do? Disappear? Move to another city? Hayes didn't answer immediately, because the honest answer was yes. Moving to another city would be safer. Starting over somewhere where those men couldn't find her. But looking around the apartment, seeing how she lived, understanding that she probably had no savings, no support network, he knew he was asking the impossible. He comments, "This story could be real." "No," he finally said. "I'm not going to ask you to abandon your life. But I need you to understand the seriousness of this. I need you to trust me when I say I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe." She wanted to believe. She so desperately wanted to believe that someone would finally protect her, that she wasn't alone in this. But experience had taught her not to trust promises, especially promises of protection. "For how long?" she asked. "How long until they forget about me? Until I stop being a threat?" Hayes opened his mouth, closed it, because he didn't have a good answer for that. The truth is, people like that didn't forget. Not until the threat was neutralized one way or another. And neutralizing meant either arresting everyone involved or he didn't want to think about the alternative. "I'll be honest," he said. "I don't know. But I know I'll use every resource I have, every connection, every favor I've accumulated to make sure you stay safe while I sort this out." Outside the kitchen, they heard Jake laughing at something on the television, a sound incongruous with the heavy tension that filled that tiny space. A reminder that a child was there, a child who shouldn't be carrying this weight. This is where the story begins, to show what is really at stake. Because in the days that followed, Lena learned that consequences came in waves. The first wave had been immediate. The shove, the throbbing pain in her shoulder, the visceral fear when she saw the knife. But that had ended when Hayes appeared. He had been contained, resolved. The second wave was more subtle, more insidious. It began the next day when she went to work at her first job, cleaning offices downtown. She entered the building as she always did, but this time she noticed a car parked across the street, tinted windows, engine running. No one getting out, just watching. She tried to ignore it. She tried to convince herself that she was being paranoid. But when she left 4 hours later, the car was still there. And when she took the bus to her second job, she saw the same car, or a very similar one, 3 blocks back. They were following her, not hiding it. They wanted her to know. They wanted her to feel fear. They wanted to break her before she even made a more direct move. She called the number Hayes had left. He answered on the second ring, and his firm, immediate voice brought her a relief she hadn't known she needed. "They're following me," she said without preamble. "Dark car. I've seen it 3 times today." "Where are you now?" "Bus stop, Main Street. Stay there. Don't get on the bus. I'm coming to get you." He arrived in less than 10 minutes. A patrol car with lights, but no siren. The official presence was sufficient. The dark car that had been parked half a block back sped off and disappeared as soon as Hayes's car turned the corner. "Come in," Hayes said, and she obeyed, her legs trembling with relief and delayed adrenaline. He drove silently for a few minutes. Then, finally, "This will continue. They'll intimidate you. They'll try to scare you until you either leave town or do something stupid that they can use against you. Or against me." "Like what?" "Call the press. Make public accusations. Anything that forces me to act, that compels me to act before there's a solid case." He looked at her. "And if I act too soon, without sufficient evidence, they'll move on. Then there's no second chance." She understood. She was trapped. "I couldn't escape because I had no resources. I couldn't speak because it would jeopardize the investigation." He could do nothing but live in constant fear while Hayes tried to build a case that would take months. "I didn't ask for this," she said, and she hated how her voice came out, small, scared, like a lost child. "I know." Hayes stopped the car in front of her building, but he didn't unlock the doors yet, and I'll never be able to thank you enough for doing it anyway. For saving Jake when you had no reason to, when you didn't know I was coming, when you could have died. He took a deep breath. "But now you're a part of this, and I'm not going to abandon you. I'm not going to let you deal with this alone." She looked at him, at the utter sincerity on his face, and wanted to believe him. But she had heard promises before, from people who seemed sincere, and they had all eventually proven empty. "People say that," she murmured, "that they won't abandon us, that they'll protect us. But when it gets tough, when it gets really dangerous, they disappear. Because in the end, everyone takes care of themselves." Hayes remained silent for a long moment. Then he turned off the car completely, turning in his seat to look directly at her. "Who abandoned you?" The question was simple, but it carried weight, and she felt the defenses she had so carefully built begin to crack. "Everyone," she finally answered. "My mother when she chose to believe my stepfather instead of protecting me. The teachers who saw the marks but did nothing. The neighbors who heard the screams and pretended not to. I learned early on that you can't trust anyone but yourself, and yet you went into that alley, even knowing that no one would come to save you if things went wrong. Because I couldn't let Jake go through what I went through. I couldn't be another person who sees and pretends not to see." Hayes held her hand. It wasn't a calculated movement. It was an impulse, a reaction to the pain in her voice, to the raw truth she had just laid bare. And when his fingers intertwined with hers, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in so long, she almost didn't recognize it. Security. Not her illusion. Not the version you painstakingly construct, but the real one. The one that comes from another person choosing to stay. "I'm not like them," Hayes said, his voice low but firm. "I won't abandon you. I won't pretend I don't see, and I won't let anything happen to you because of what you did for my son." She wanted to believe. God, how she wanted to. But years of disappointment had built walls too high to tear down with pretty words. "You can't promise that," she said. "You don't control what they do." "No, but I control what I do. And what I'm going to do is make sure you're never alone on this journey, that you always have someone watching over you, that you always have someone to call." He squeezed her hand, gently. "And when this is over, when I've arrested them all and you can finally breathe without fear, I'll still be here. Because a debt like this doesn't expire. Gratitude like this doesn't disappear. What seems simple begins to reveal layers that no one expected." Because in the following days, as her routine adjusted to the new reality of living under constant surveillance, Lena began to notice things. Small details that Hayes hadn't mentioned. Things he had left out when explaining the situation. Like the fact that the men following her weren't just random thugs. She recognized one of them from a news report she'd seen weeks before, about corrupt police officers being investigated internally. And the man who had followed her was in the photo, wearing a uniform, with a badge. This meant that the organization Hayes was investigating wasn't just criminal, it had infiltrated the police department itself. And that explained why he was being so cautious, why he couldn't just arrest everyone and put an end to it, because he didn't know who to trust within the system itself. She didn't mention it to him right away. First, she processed it. First, she understood the magnitude. Hayes wasn't just fighting criminals, he was fighting colleagues, people who should have been on his side, and that put him in danger as much as it put her. When she finally confronted him, one night when he showed up to check her apartment, his reaction confirmed everything. "Did you know?" she said. It wasn't a question. "I knew some of them are police officers." Hayes stopped what he was doing, checking the window. Lockend looked at her. The weariness on his face was deeper than she had noticed before. "How did you find out?" "I saw one of them on television. A report about police corruption. He was there. In uniform." Hayes sat heavily in the old chair near the desk. Suddenly, he looked older, more worn. "Yes, part of the organization infiltrated the department. And I don't know how far it will go. I don't know who's clean and who's bought. That's why I'm doing this alone. That's why I can't ask for official backup, because it might fall on the wrong ears." "And Jake?" she asked. "Did they go after him because of the investigation?" "Yes." The word came out heavy with guilt. "He overheard a conversation he shouldn't have, between me and a federal agent I trust. And he mentioned something at school, something specific enough to get their attention. And they realized I was closer than they thought. So they decided to use Jake as leverage, as a way to make me stop. And are you going to stop?" Hayes looked at her with an intensity that made her hold her breath. "No, because if I stop, they win. And other children, other innocent people, will suffer. But I'm not going to sacrifice my son either, or you. So I'm walking a very fine line between doing my job and protecting the people who matter." And there it was, the whole truth, or at least closer to her than she had ever known before. Hayes was caught between two impossibilities, between justice and protection, between professional duty and paternal love, and she, unintentionally, unknowingly, had become part of that equation when she decided to walk down that alley. "You should have told me this from the beginning," she said, but without anger, just wariness. "I deserved to know what I was getting myself into. You're right, I'm sorry, I just didn't want to scare you more than you already were." He ran a hand through his hair, and part of me still hoped I could keep you out of it, that I could resolve it without dragging you any further down. But it's impossible, right? Because I'm already in deep trouble. They've already seen my face. They already know where I live. And if they think I know something that could harm them, they're not just going to leave me alone. No." His honesty was brutal, but necessary. "They won't." Lena sat down too, the weight of it all pressing on her shoulders. "So, what do we do?" "Us," Hayes repeated, and there was something akin to surprise in his voice. "You mean you still want to be a part of this? Even knowing how deep it goes? Even understanding that it could take months to resolve?" "It's not a matter of wanting to. It's a matter of having no choice." She looked him straight in the eyes. "But if I'm going to be in this anyway, I'd rather be with someone who's honest with me, who tells me the truth, even when it hurts, who treats me like a partner, instead of a victim who needs to be shielded from reality." Hayes remained silent for a long moment. Then he nodded, clear respect on his face. "Okay, then I'll tell you everything. Every detail, every risk, and we'll decide together how to proceed." He writes in the comments, "I understand that pain," and he told the story. For the next hour, sitting in that small apartment as night fell outside, Hayes revealed everything he had kept inside. The trafficking operation that had roots in 3 states, the corrupt police officers who facilitated transportation and protected routes, The money flowing through seemingly legitimate businesses, and the victims. So many victims. People who had seen too much, talked too much, become too inconvenient. And you're doing this alone? Lena asked when he finished. Without backup, without anyone you can completely trust. I have a federal contact. An agent who works outside the local system. But he's in another state, coordinating a larger part of the investigation. Here, it's basically just me. Hayes looked at his own hands. And now you. And Jake. People I didn't ask to get involved, but who became part of this anyway. From that moment on, everything begins to change silently. Because the transformation that took place in the following weeks was subtle but profound. Hayes began to show up more often. Not just to check on safety, but to talk. To share quick meals between shifts. To ensure that she was not only physically safe, but also emotionally coping with the constant weight of fear. And Jake would come along sometimes. The boy had become so attached to her that it surprised both adults. As if he had recognized something familiar in her. Someone who understood what it was like to be afraid, but to choose courage nonetheless. Lena, who had spent years avoiding connections, avoiding caring too much, because caring meant vulnerability, discovered she couldn't keep her distance. Not from Jake, who drew for her and told her stories from school as if she were a beloved aunt. And not from Hayes, who was revealing layers of himself that he clearly didn't show too many people. Like the night he arrived later than usual, visibly exhausted, and she insisted he eat something before leaving. He agreed, and while she heated up soup she had made the day before, he spoke. My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. Quick. From diagnosis to death, it was 4 months. His voice was neutral, as if he were recounting facts rather than personal trauma. And I didn't know how to cope. I threw myself into work. I took all the cases that nobody else wanted. I became obsessed with closing investigations because it was the only thing that still made sense in a world that had taken away the person I loved most. Lena placed the soup in front of him, but said nothing. She just waited. And Jake suffered because of it. Because I was there physically, but not really. I was so consumed by the pain and the work I used to avoid the pain, that I didn't see how much he needed me. Really. Not just the father who puts food on the table and takes him to school, but the father who is present. Hayes stirred the soup without eating, and when they went after him, when I realized that my obsession had put my son at risk, I understood. I understood that I had failed him in the same way I had failed her in recent months. I was so focused on other things that I wasn't really seeing the people who mattered. But you see it now, Lena said. Gently. You're protecting him. You're changing. Because of you. He finally looked at her. Because you showed me what true courage looks like. It's not wearing a badge and carrying a gun. It's not having authority in training. It's being small and scared and doing the right thing anyway. It's putting yourself between a child and danger without thinking about the personal cost. And that reminded me why I got into this job in the first place. Not for the investigations. Not for the adrenaline. But to protect people who can't protect themselves. Lena felt a tightness in her chest because she saw the moral conflict he carried. She saw it in his eyes, in the way he moved, always alert, always calculating. Hayes was trapped between two worlds. Between being a father who protected his son at any cost, and being a sheriff who had sworn to do justice no matter the price. And she had complicated things. Because now he had a third person to protect her. And his resources were limited. Time was limited. And every decision meant choosing who to protect most, who to risk the most. You're thinking about what happened in that alley, she said. It wasn't a question. You're thinking about the choice you had to make. Hayes didn't deny it. I could have arrested them right there. I had witnesses, you and Jake. I could have used that as evidence to finally put at least those 3 behind bars. He paused. But doing that meant exposing Jake in court, turning him into an official witness, putting his name on documents that dangerous people would have access to. painting a permanent target on the back of an 8-year-old child. So you let them go. I let it go, with warning, with threats. But I let it go. Because protecting my son was worth more than closing the case. He looked directly at her. But that also meant leaving you exposed. Because you saw everything. You intervened. You became an unwitting witness. And if I had prosecuted, you would have been dragged along. You would have been interrogated. You would have had to testify. And people like them don't forget the faces of those who testify against them. You saved me from being officially branded, but not to be marked in any way. Because they know who you are. They know you saw. And they're watching to see if you'll become a problem. Hayes finally took a spoonful of soup, but it felt automatic. So I chose to protect Jake from legal exposure. But in doing so, I couldn't completely protect you. And that eats me up inside. Because there had to be a way to save you both. To achieve justice and protection. But there isn't. And every day that passes, I feel like I'm failing you, the same way I almost failed him. Lena reached across the table, placing her hand on his. The touch was instinctive, comforting. You're not failing. You're making impossible choices as best you can. And I understand. I understand why you chose to protect Jake first. Any decent parent would do the same. But you shouldn't have to pay for that choice. And I won't. Because you're here. Because you're keeping me informed. Because you didn't abandon me when it would have been easier. She squeezed his hand gently. You kept your promise. You said you wouldn't leave me alone in this. And you didn't. Hayes turned his hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. And in that simple gesture was an acknowledgement of something neither of them had yet put into words. Something that was growing in the spaces between vigilance and protection. Between shared fear and slowly built trust. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because the bond that formed between them in those weeks was forged under pressure in a way that ordinary romance could never replicate. There were no romantic dinners. There were no flowers or poetic declarations. There was Hayes showing up at 3 a.m. because he'd seen suspicious activity near her building. There was Lena making extra coffee every morning because she knew he'd stop by before his shift to check on her. There was Jake drawing for her at the kitchen table while Hayes checked the windows for the 10th time. There was the boy sleeping on her couch when Hayes had a double shift and couldn't leave him alone. There was Lena singing softly to soothe the child after a nightmare. And Hayes standing in the doorway, watching with an expression that mixed gratitude and something deeper. There were small gestures that meant everything, like Hayes bringing her food when he knew she'd worked too hard to cook. Like Lena sewing his uniform when she noticed a loose button. Like Jake running to hug her every time he arrived, as if she were a natural part of the family, instead of a stranger who had entered their lives by accident. And there were moments of brutal honesty, like when Lena confessed that sometimes she thought about simply disappearing, taking what little she had and starting over in a city where no one knew her. And Hayes didn't try to convince her to stay with empty promises. He just said, if you go, I understand, but I'll miss you, and Jake will miss you, and I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if you're safe. Or like when Hayes admitted he was afraid, not of physical danger, but of failing, of making the wrong choice and losing someone again. That his obsession with justice would cost him another person he loved. And Lena didn't say everything would be all right. She just held his hand and said, so we'll be afraid together. But don't let fear decide. A month after the incident in the alley, something had changed. Hayes arrived at her apartment late at night, and there was urgency in his knocking at the door. She opened it and saw immediately something had happened. They made a move, he said without preamble. They tried to get Jake again. At school this time. But I had put discreet security in place. We caught them first. Relief came first. Then fear. And now, are you going to sue them? I can't. They were different people, not the same ones from the alley. And they have alibis for everything. Lawyers are already working on it. They'll be free in hours. Hayes went inside, closing the door behind him. but that means they're escalating, that they're getting desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. Or they do worse things. He agreed. That's why I came. I need to get Jake out of town for a while. Send him to my wife's sister. She lives in another state. He'll be safe there. And you. I'm staying. I'm finishing this. Because if I run away now, they win. And they'll keep doing this to other people, and me. The question came out shorter than she intended. Hayes moved closer. He stood near. Closer than he had been before. You're coming with me. Not to where Jake is going, but to a safe place while I shut this down. Safe house. Federal protection. All official. How long? I don't know. Weeks? Maybe? Months. Until I have enough evidence to take them all down at once. Lena looked around the apartment. At the small but personal life she had built. At the independence she had fought so hard to achieve. And then she looked at Hayes. At the man who had appeared in her life as a result of a decision she had made in seconds. And she realized it was no longer about choosing between security and freedom. It was about choosing between living and hiding and truly living. Okay, she said. But on one condition, which, you keep me informed. About everything. You don't treat me like a victim who needs to be protected from the truth. You treat me like a partner in this. Because I am. From the moment I walked into that alley, Hayes smiled. The first genuine smile she'd seen on his face since they met. Partner, he repeated. I like that. Write this down. That really affected me. They spent the next few hours planning. Hayes had contacts. Safe places the criminal organization didn't know about. He would arrange everything discreetly. Jake would leave first, in the morning, with an undercover federal escort, and Lena would follow 2 days later, when things had calmed down and no one was paying extra attention to Hayes' movements. It's going to be strange, Lena said, sometime in the early morning, as they sat in her living room drinking coffee that neither of them really wanted, but that gave them something to do with their hands. No work, no routine, just waiting. It's not just going to be about waiting. It's going to be about staying alive. It's going to be about having a chance to start over when this is over. Hayes looked at her intensely. And it will end, I promise. I'm going to end this. I'm going to make them pay for putting you in this position. I put myself in that position when I chose to go down that alley. And I'll never stop being grateful that you made that choice. He hesitated, then reached for her hand again. It had become a familiar gesture between them, comforting. When this is over, when you can come back, if you want to come back, I'd like us to be able to try, for real, not just protection and fear, but something real. You, me, and Jake. Her heart leaped, because she had felt it too, the connection growing, the bond deepening beyond circumstance. But she was afraid to name it, afraid it was just adrenaline and forced closeness. Afraid that when the danger passed, when the need for protection disappeared, he would realize there was nothing real there. What if there's nothing left when the danger is over? She asked, her vulnerability clear in her voice. What if this only exists because we're scared and need each other? So let's find out. Together. But I don't think it's just that. I think it's more. I think you awakened something in me that had been dead for 3 years. And I think I showed you that it's worth trusting again. Even when it's scary. She wanted to believe. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to do just that. What seemed simple begins to reveal layers that no one expected. Jake left the next morning. Lena was there to say goodbye, and the hug he gave her was so tight it hurt. Will you be there when I get back? He asked, his eyes wide and worried. I will, she promised, and I'll send you letters. With bad drawings that you can laugh at. Your drawings aren't bad, Jake protested honestly, and that made her smile, even with tears threatening to well up. Hayes led his son to the car, where federal agents were waiting. And Lena saw something in his face when he hugged Jake one last time before the boy got into the vehicle. It was pain mixed with relief. It was doing the right thing even when every instinct screamed to hold his son close. When the car drove away, Hayes stood on the sidewalk for a long time, just watching until he couldn't see anymore. Then he went back to where Lena was waiting. 2 days, he said, and you'll be safe. Those 2 days were strange. There was temporary relief in knowing Jake was safe, that Lena would soon be too. But there was incompleteness, because the danger hadn't gone away. It had only been postponed, redistributed, and Lena could see it in the way Hayes moved now, more tense, more alert. As if with Jake safe, he could finally focus completely on the hunt. As if he had lifted a weight off his shoulders, but replaced it with something sharper, more dangerous. The night before she left, Hayes showed up at her apartment later than usual, and there was something different about him. Contained energy, controlled excitement. "I did it," he said as soon as she opened the door. "I got evidence." A recording of a conversation between 2 of the corrupt police officers discussing the operation. Names, dates, amounts. Everything the feds need to start taking this down. The relief was immense. "So it's over. You did it." "Not completely yet. I need to deliver it personally. Tomorrow. But yes, we're close. Very close." He went inside, and she saw he had a backpack, and that's why I came. Because tomorrow will be dangerous. They might notice I'm moving. They might try to stop me. And if something goes wrong, I need you to know. No. She put her hand over his mouth. "Don't do that. Don't say goodbye like you're going to die. You're going to hand over the evidence. You're going to come back. And we're going to get through this together." Hayes took her hand, pulling it away from her own mouth but keeping it there. "You're right. I'm sorry. I needed to see you. I needed to make sure you were okay. That you were ready for tomorrow." "I'm ready." And she was. For the first time in a long time, she was ready not only to survive, but to live. To trust. To believe that good things could happen even after so long expecting only the worst. They stayed up all night, talking, planning, and at some point, as the sky began to lighten, Hayes kissed her. It was gentle. Hesitant at first, as if giving her a chance to pull back. But she didn't pull back. She deepened the kiss, placing in it all the hope she didn't know she still had. When they parted, Hayes rested his forehead against hers. "When this is over," he whispered, "when you and Jake are back and safe, I'm going to do this right. I'm going to take you out to dinner for real. I'm going to get to know you without the fear hanging over us. I'm going to show you who I am when I'm not just trying to keep everyone alive." "I already know who you are," Lena replied. "I saw you at the worst possible moment. And yet, you're the best man I've ever known." He left when the sun was fully up. He had work to do, evidence to deliver, and Lena had only a few hours before the federal agents came to get her and take her to a safe location. She spent that time packing the few things she could take with her. Clothes, some important documents, the photo of her father that she kept, taken before he got sick, when he still smiled, and the drawings Jake had made for her, carefully folded between the pages of a book. She was almost ready when the phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick it up. "Lena." The voice was Hayes, but there was something wrong with it. Urgency, fear. What happened? "They know. They know I got the recording. And they know you're leaving today." He breathed heavily, as if he were running. "Change of plans. The feds can't get here in time. You need to leave now. Right now." Her stomach sank. "How? Where to? Do you have your backpack ready?" "Try, grab her. Go out the back door, not the main hallway. There's a fire escape that leads to the alley. Go down that one. I'll be waiting for you on the side street. Gray car. Come quickly. And Lena, try. If you see someone you don't recognize, don't stop. Don't speak. Just run." The call cut off, and Lena stood there for a fraction of a second, her heart pounding fear, threatening to paralyze her. But then she moved. She grabbed her backpack. She checked the window quickly and saw a car parked in front of the building, 2 men inside, waiting. She went out the back door as Hayes had instructed. The fire escape was old, rusty, and creaked terribly when she stepped on it. Each step seemed too high. Each second felt like an eternity. And when she finally reached the ground, the narrow, dirty alley, she ran. She turned the corner and saw the gray car. Hayes was at the wheel, the engine running. She got in before he even came to a complete stop, and he drove off as soon as the door closed. "What happened?" she asked, trying to catch her breath. "Leak. Someone inside the department warned them that I had obtained the recording, and they decided to act before I could hand it over." Hayes drove fast, but cautiously, constantly checking his mirrors, and they found out about you. About you going home safely. They were going to get you before you got there. And now we'll improvise. I'll take you straight to the meeting with the federal agent. It's not protocol, it's not safe, but it's the only option. He looked at her briefly. I'm sorry for putting you in this situation, for not protecting you better. You're protecting me. Now, you're doing everything right." She glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a car behind them, following very closely. Hayes. He had already seen it. "Hold on. This is going to get ugly." He accelerated. The car behind accelerated, too. And then it began. A chase through the streets that were starting to fill with morning traffic. Hayes drove with precision that came from training and years of experience. But the car behind wouldn't give up, wouldn't back down. "They're not going to shoot," Hayes said, more to himself than to her. "Too many witnesses. Too much exposure. They're going to try to force us to stop, surround us." And that's exactly what they tried. Another car appeared from the side, tried to cut across. Hayes swerved, went up onto the sidewalk for a second, then back onto the street. Horns blared, shouts, chaos. But he was taking her away. He was keeping his promise. And Lena realized, in that moment of absolute clarity amidst the chaos, that Hayes had made a choice between investigation and her, between justice and protection. And he had chosen her. The meeting with the feds. She yelled over the roar of the engine. "You're going to lose if you keep running with them, chasing us." "I'm not going to lose you," he replied, simply and absolutely. And there it was. The truth that neither of them had spoken aloud until that moment. He wasn't doing it out of duty. He wasn't protecting a witness or fulfilling an oath. He was saving someone who had become too important to risk. Someone who had entered his life, protecting what he loved most, and who, in doing so, had become a part of what he loved most as well. She faced 3 dangerous men, too. Protect a child she didn't even know. And when the father showed up as sheriff, who had seen enough courage in her career not to be easily impressed, he vowed he would never forget. But what she didn't know was that protecting his son had put her on the radar of an entire criminal organization. And now, fleeing through the streets with pursuers trying to force them to stop. Hayes had to choose between the investigation that could end them once and for all, or the woman who had risked everything. Without a second thought, and for the first time in years of making impossible choices, he had no doubt. He chose her. Always. Hayes made a sharp turn, entering the parking lot of a commercial building. He knew every street in that city, every shortcut, every exit that ordinary criminals didn't know about. And he used all that knowledge now, not to arrest, but to protect. They lost their pursuers in a matter of minutes. But Hayes didn't slow down immediately. He kept driving, checking, making sure they had really escaped before finally breathing a sigh of relief. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking at her for the first time since the chase began. Lena nodded, still processing, still feeling the adrenaline pumping through her veins. "I am. Thanks to you always," he said. And it wasn't an empty promise. It was a fact. It was a choice he had made and would continue to make. "The federal agent is waiting 3 blocks from here. Public place. Safe. I'm going to hand over the recording. I'm going to put you under official protection, and I'm going to end this. Today." And he did exactly that. 30 minutes later, the recording was in the right hands. Federal agents mobilizing, warrants being prepared, and Lena being escorted to a vehicle that would take her away from there, to safety, to wait. But before going in, she turned back. She ran to Hayes and kissed him, in front of everyone, not caring about stairs or protocol or anything other than letting him know, "I love you," she said when they parted. Words she had never said to anyone. Words she kept to herself, because giving love meant risk. But he had shown her that some risks were worth everything. "And I'll be waiting, no matter how long it takes." Hayes cupped her face in his hands. "I love you too. And it won't take long. I promise. And when you come back, when Jake comes back, we'll have the life you both deserve. Without fear. Without looking over our shoulders. Just the three of us." She got into the car, and as she drove away, she glanced through the rear window and saw Hayes standing there, watching until he couldn't see anymore. Just like he had done when Jake left. Because that was who he was. The man who protected. The man who kept promises. The man who had chosen love above all else. 3 weeks later, the news exploded. The biggest operation against police corruption in the region's history. 17 arrests, including police officers, judges, and businessmen. A criminal network. Dismantled, and at the center of it all, a sheriff who had risked everything to do what was right. And when Lena was finally able to return, when she left the safe house and saw Hayes waiting with Jake beside her, both smiling, she understood. Sometimes the hardest journey leads to the most beautiful places. Sometimes you find family in the most unlikely circumstances. And sometimes, a single act of courage changes not just one life, but 3. If stories about people who choose to protect even when the whole world tells them not to get involved, about courage that is born in seconds and transforms into something bigger than anyone could have predicted, resonate with you, stick around here at Heart of Protection Stories. This channel exists precisely for that reason, to tell stories that show that sometimes the best destinies begin with the scariest decisions. Comment below. Did this protection make sense to me? Because I want to know if this transformation, this journey from fear to love, resonated with you in the same way it resonates with me. And if any part of this story made you feel something real, if you rooted for them, if you believed that love can blossom even in the most impossible circumstances, leave a like. It's a simple way to show that stories like this matter. And look, the next story delves even deeper into this kind of impossible choice. This kind of protection that costs everything but is worth every second. Just click and continue reading there. Because when it's about true feeling, the story never really ends.